In the following interviews, I talk to Emma, a parent, Jazz, an occupational therapist, and Sharon, the director of a local support hub.
So I'm Emma Hester. My occupation is a police officer, but I'm currently on a career break studying occupational therapy.
My name's Jazz and I'm a SEN advocate for the hub.
My name is Sharon Wignall and I'm a director of an occupational therapy practice in Bracknell.
EBSA stands for Emotionally Based School Avoidance, and it essentially means that a child is unable to attend school, not because they don't want to or not because they're truanting or can't be bothered, but because there are some barriers to them attending.
So it's emotional based school avoidance.
My understanding is it stands for Emotionally Based School Avoidance. It makes no sense to me why it is called that, I have to say, because it just sounds like somebody's being naughty or somebody's doing it on purpose.
I think to me it's, I suppose, the presentation of needs not being met and how it impacts on that child.
I think it's, as an OT, I guess our jobs are all about independence. I guess that's what an occupational therapist, I guess it's kind of confidence, happiness, and it's very much kind of child-led, so it's looking at what a child wants to do. So I guess when you say what is emotionally based school avoidance to us, it's, I guess it's something that we see a lot of in schools when we're kind of going out to do assessments, and there are certainly, we see kind of children who are very much at risk of it. But yeah, I mean, what does it mean to us? I guess it's just very, very sad that at the end of the day, somebody hasn't got the opportunity to be independent, I guess.
I had to learn myself, and I had to learn really quickly, because it's not socially acceptable to have children that don't attend school, and people start to think that you're a weak parent, or that you're not putting enough encouragement in or enough time or effort. But when you have a child that literally is kind of sat crying and rocking by the door, unable to attend, there really is not much you can do about it.
So for me personally, I've not had experience of it with my children, but we do have a lot of parents now who come to us who have their children struggling from various triggers to the point that they either can't or don't want to attend school anymore.
I think it's just something that we've become more and more aware of over the years. I don't really remember it being a thing like kind of 10, 15 years ago, but now it's something that I guess even if they're not describing it, that it's about somebody not being able to access something that actually they fundamentally want to do. So I guess we've become aware of it through our kind of day-to-day work.
There was some research done by Connolly et al. In September 2023, and it was into school distress, and it showed that of their cohort that they were looking at, 92% of the children who were struggling to attend school were neurodivergent, and 88% of them were autistic.
It's more prevalent, I think 28.3% in secondary versus 17.2% in primary. So, and we see that all the time. So we see children, you know, typically there will be children in primary who are EBSA, but typically where we really see it is between primary and secondary. So they make that transition from primary to secondary, and it's for a lot of neurodivergent children and young people, it is literally kind of make or break.
My youngest now, we've taken all the pressure off, and essentially she is being unauthorised in her absence because we've got professional reports that say that she's too anxious to attend. I look back now with the knowledge that I've gained, and I think about the trauma that caused her and the damage that caused her, and so I will tell any parent that I can get hold of who has a similar struggle. If your child is not getting up and using their own arms and legs to dress themselves and walk into school, and you have to do any part of it forcibly, then you need to look at what strategies you can put in place to support your child, rather than just to do it because you happen to be slightly bigger than they are.
It could be a wide range of things. It can be sort of family circumstances, so death of loved ones, it can be the environment, it can be unmet needs, it can be social situations, whether that's social isolation, bullying. It can widely vary. Obviously, SEN comes into it a lot.
It's there's a real injustice and a real systemic problem around school attendance. So we know that there's been an increase of 33% in fixed penalty notices for children not attending school. And if they worked, there'd be a correlation between children's attendance, but there isn't. From our experience, we tried to work with the school. We contacted the school, we contacted the education welfare officer, we proactively contacted the local authority. For a space of 6 weeks, nobody contacted us when our child was out of school. The first piece of contact we had was a fixed penalty notice that dropped on the doormat for us not engaging with trying to reintegrate my child into school. Obviously, as a police officer, I know I'm not a criminal, and the fact that I get a criminal sanction for having a child who has a disability and is too anxious to attend school is really problematic, you know, if that's how we're treating families of the most vulnerable children.
So I know from Section 19 of the Education Act that the LA has a duty to ensure that children are given a suitable school placement full time or suitable education. In practice, this isn't really the case. There's obviously that 15 days where if a child is out of education for illness, medical reason or exclusion, or any other reason that obviously things need to be put into place. I think so. Schools, they vary, obviously. A lot of them will have behaviour policies, attendance policies, obviously policies around what reasonable adjustments need to be made if a child is struggling, whether that's with SEN or anything else for that matter, and trying to put in support plans. Again, I think that schools need to be tailoring. They need to look at each sort of child as an individual and go, actually, okay, these 10 potential triggers that we've been told could be something that could present as EBSA aren't the only things there. Every child is different, every trigger impacts a child differently. It's about collaboratively actually being able to work together to ensure that the child is supported. And yeah, that's never the focus.
I guess from our perspective, we might be involved with children who are have got like a bit of a reintegration plan back into mainstream education. I don't think it's always kind of possible. But the kind of thing that we would do is we've got children that we're supporting at the moment that we are kind of by their side in terms of maybe going back into mainstream or maybe more likely going into a different kind of provision. But I guess it's that whole taking it at their pace.
For those who do recognise that that isn't suitable for their child's needs, yeah, there's absolutely a stigma attached, not only to the child but to the family. Again, without a whole complete overhaul and it being normalised. I mean, a lot of people aren't even aware that alternative education is a thing, which I think is a huge problem, because I think there would be a lot more families who would be accessing alternative education, whether that's through education other than at school or through home education. I think a lot more people would be doing it if they understood their rights and what is available to meet their child's needs.
Yeah, I think there's a stigma attached to anything that is different. I mean, not for all. I mean, I think some children and families absolutely welcome like going somewhere that feels very different. And that wouldn't occur to them. But there are definitely some families and children where it's kind of like there's definitely I think anything that is different, isn't it, has got a bit of a stigma with it and a stigma attached to it. And then I guess it's down to how that family or child thinks of it.
The child investigates the issues she had when leaving a mainstream school, as well as joining an alternative provision and the struggles she currently faces.
I'm Abby and I'm 15. I stopped going to school in February of last year. Instead of going to normal school, I go to an alternative provision called Harmony, It takes ages to get there and I hate that, but it's great. I'm looking at going to a place called Odyssey, which is closer to where we live, so I can take the bus, because Harmony's not a long enough day for me and my education. I need more education to do GCSEs properly. Always a short day, but it makes me feels like I'm wasting my life if I'm not doing anything, because I'm just kind of sat there doing absolute nothing for like hours. It changed me as a person, because I don't like feel safe in a big school anymore, because they kind of pushed me to do things that I couldn't do, and then because of that I feel like other people are going to push me to do things I can't do, and then it just cycles back. At my old school, I was fine in year 7. I had a bit of anxiety when we came out of, so I was in year 6 when lockdown first happened, but when we had that little bit I was in year 7, and I was fine, but then I had a tiny bit of anxiety then, but then it got better really quickly. And then in year 8, same thing. It was probably for like a month maybe, but then in year 9 was when it got really bad, and I just couldn't, like, I didn't go to school for ages. I was like out of school for like 7 months, stayed in my house for maybe like 5, and didn't really do anything. I think if they'd kind of listened to me and not pushed me into too many things like they did, I think possibly, yeah, I could have stayed there. I think if I went to a new school, it would be quite good, because the one I'm looking at going to is longer days, so I'll have more time to do things, less time to do things that I don't need to do in the afternoon, like naps. Like if I need a nap, I can have like an hour when I get home, but I'll have more education and I won't just be wasting away like ages and ages of my life. From my family's point of view, I know my dad struggled quite a bit. Not just him, like everyone did, because I felt bad because I was obviously having an impact on everyone else. My dad, I remember specifically one day, it was, I think, maybe the day before, or the day that I went to see Harry Styles at Coventry. We were sat outside school. I was like, okay, I'll go in, got him to drive me there. 5-minute drive, obviously. It wasn't that far. We were sat outside and I was like, I can't do it. And he said to me, they're just bricks. They're not going to jump out at you. They're not going to hurt you, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, but I just can't do it. I can't think like that. When I'm in there, I'm trapped and everything. And then, so he took me home. But then when we were driving home, he started crying. And that made me really sad, because I was like, wow, like this is really hurting my dad. And like, he doesn't, obviously. And he said to me, he was like, I just don't want to see you like this. I'm not mad at you or anything. I just wish that you didn't have to feel this like kind of anxiety. And Lou as well, they kind of had, because of I was struggling so much, everyone put more attention on me than they did for them. So I kind of felt bad about that, because they were going through their own stuff at the time with like trans and stuff, and like, yeah, I kind of took the attention away from everyone. And my mum has a really hard job. She works in a mental health part of council, so she deals with a lot of people in similar situations, and she used to kind of sit and talk to me, and she'd be like, oh, this happened, and it really reminded me of you. And then sometimes she'd cry. So I think it had quite an impact on my family. If I was going to talk to someone that went through the same thing I went through, I would say to them, just don't push yourself to do things you can't do, because if you know you can't do it, then you know you can't do it, and try and get help, like the help you need earlier, because I was just kind of pushed to do more things that I knew I wasn't going to be able to do, and that made it worse.
I talked to a local teacher at an alternative provision, and this is what they had to say. Anyone can have EBSA, but in my experience it is usually neurodiverse people, often previously unrecognised as neurodiverse, which is why their difficulties have been misunderstood up until they break, hence EBSA. The pressure on mental health from masking is tremendous, and breaking in this way is severe and traumatic. Young people who experience EBSA are always those who've been trying incredibly hard, which is why forcing them through gradual exposure to go back to the place which caused the trauma in the first place is cruel. Not enough support is offered. Many professionals still do not understand EBSA and its causes. The more schools become zero tolerance and enforce rules such as silence, looking at the teacher, even homework with punishment, the worse the situation becomes. Many schools and professionals still believe that young people who are masking are fine when they are in school, which simply reinforces a young person's low self-esteem and need to put further pressure on themselves to conform. Many schools and professionals still believe that young people and their parents are too soft and need to toughen up. Young people are told to try harder as if they weren't already trying their best, and parent blaming is rife. An article from the BBC reads, Maths specialist Sam Gray, Newman's head of behaviour, says the school had the worst behaviour we've ever seen when we got back after COVID. However, it has worked hard on how to best deal with students, tightening up the existing systems and responses to behaviour. For instance, being late to lessons is an automatic detention, but new rewards have also been introduced, including celebrating a Newman hero every week. This may seem like a good plan, but for neurodiverse and especially EBSA students, this is a damaging behaviour that can make the situation a lot worse. Local authorities pathologise neurodivergence and do very little to change the disabling environments or attitudes. The SEND Code of Practice medicalises neurodivergence. Professionals do not understand autism and ADHD is particularly misunderstood. CAMS support is rare until at a crisis point and is service-driven in that CAMS provides online CBT or cognitive behavioural therapy and parenting courses, both of which assume that the anxious person needs to face their fears and gradually expose so they realise that their anxiety is unfounded. Social anxiety is not a choice and people are not being silly. These approaches are not supportive. Parenting courses can be particularly damaging as they instruct parents to ignore their child's EBSA and reward them for ignoring their body's trauma responses. This simply adds to the build-up of trauma and can make the eventual burnout worse. Schools do not need to prosecute non-attendance, but many still do. This is because they are ill-informed and do not accept EBSA as an illness. The government targets and Ofsted focus on attendance make the situation far worse, and many still believe that the prosecution of parents will teach them. Many schools who are neurodiverse aware will ensure simple steps, like a familiar key person, a gentle soft start to the day, coaching and mentoring for neurodiverse children, and self-regulation and appreciation of difference inclusivity taught as part of the curriculum.